as always, we will begin with 3 deep breaths. Take a deep breath in. Softly let this out of the mouth. Deep breath in again. Softly out of the mouth. Last one, deep breath in. And let out a nice sigh. Today's topic I want to give you a bit of context on, and I'm not sure what I'm going to end up calling this podcast just yet, which is why I can't tell you what the topic of the day is. But to give you some context, there was a screenshot that I took from someone else. Her name is Daniela Rojas, and she basically spoke about how there are musicians and people that, although are talented, does not mean that they are in integrity, does not mean that they deserve a space behind the altar in medicine spaces. And I screenshotted that, put it onto my story, and then gave my reflection to it. And wonderfully, thank you to all of you on Instagram who had voted. After I gave my reflection to it, I said, should we make this a new Wolf Mother podcast episode? And there were 15 of you that said yes, which is super exciting. So let's dive into this a little bit more. So Daniela Rojas, for context on who she is a medicine ceremony musician, but she is also a devotee of the Shipibo lineage. She works with ayahuasca. She works with her maestros in the jungle. She does dietas. She hosts retreats, the whole 9 yards. And so I really love that she posted that, because she's got a pretty good following, and I do think that larger creators on certain platforms should use the opportunity to be open and honest about the fact that, yeah, there are some musicians that are absolutely incredible and they fucking suck as people. Of course, she didn't say it that way. It seems she's probably much more poised in her sentences than I am. But I want to give you the reflection that I had. So my reflection was based around the fact that many years ago, Dylan and I met working at an ayahuasca church in the United States. And when we left, we were very vocal about the place, that we were not in integrity, alignment, ethics, morals with this place and what they were doing behind the scenes. Of course, we didn't come out and just say everything that was happening behind the scenes. And we were not the first cohort of people, because it was us and one other person to leave. And we were not the first group to leave the place and then be like, hey, this is a horrible place. But the person who runs it is very brilliant when it comes to manipulation. And so when I first got there, I should speak to my experience. When I first got there, I really believed that other people were out to get him for the work that he was doing. By month 4, I wanted to leave, but I was told that I couldn't leave because I had made a commitment to X amount of weeks of being the breathwork practitioner as well as one of the facilitators in ceremony. So I put my hands up, I stood, and then as soon as I left, I was like, hey. So let's take a deep breath in and out. I'm not only going to talk about musicians in ceremony, but I also want to speak to musicians in ceremony. I want to speak to medicine servers. I want to speak to the other facilitators in the space. Just because someone is talented does not mean that they are a good person. So I mean talented in terms of, yes, playing music, like Daniela Rojas was saying, but I mean talented in terms of serving medicine, talented in serving, and maybe not serving, but just like facilitating energy healing and doing other things throughout the space. Just because it seems like you had a good ceremony or you had a good experience doesn't mean that that person outside of ceremony is doing the right things to uphold the traditions, uphold being a good person, uphold safety in the community. Now, let's take a step back for a moment. Safety. You can only ever... Okay, taking another step back. I can tell you that a space is safe. I can say, guys, this is a safe space for you. The reality is, through a trauma-informed lens, no matter how many fucking times I tell that to you, the space is only safe if you believe that the space is safe. You have to feel safety in your body and your mind to know that it is a safe space. Because me saying that it's a safe space, and of course I'm going to take all the precautions that I properly can to make it a safe space, it still doesn't matter though. Because at the end of the day, if you don't feel safety in your body and your mind, then it is not a safe space. So let's just like keep that to the side and make sure that that's something that we know. And I really do, I'm giving my opinions on all of this, but I love your guys' feedback. So if you're listening on Spotify or YouTube, drop a comment below. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, find another platform that you can leave a comment on, or even come over to Instagram and tell us what you think. But I'm giving my opinions. It's my podcast. I'm giving my thoughts and my opinions. But I want to hear what you guys think as well. So in terms of music, music is a big part to most medicine ceremonies, whether we're talking medicine like ayahuasca or we're talking medicine like cacao. If you've ever came to one of my virtual or in-person cacao ceremonies, there's music. If you sat with Dylan for combo, there's music. If you've came to our retreats and you've sat with ayahuasca with one of our teachers who came from the jungle, they are singing Icaros, right? And so, because the thing is, the plants, I guess I'll explain this. Many years ago, we did a 3-day, it's one of our signature 3-day retreats. And we were in the middle of the San Pedro Huachuma ceremony that Dylan serves. And someone sat there, and Dylan had called for noble silence. And this participant sat near the river and just happened to be overwhelmed. And then turned around when we were allowed to speak again and was like, God is literally music. Literally, God is fucking music. Like, God is in music. And it's like, it feels like, and this is my own interpretation, that it's a different version of God. It's a different version of music. Like, it's just not, it's not the music that you immediately think of, and it's not maybe the God that you originally think of, but if you let yourself tap into the energy flow, there is music where you're like, whoa, this is a version of God. You know, and sometimes you can connect with God, spirit, whatever you want to call it, and be like, oh, this is a vibration, a version of music that feels different. So keeping that in mind, in many medicine ceremonies, this is a very common thing for there to be some type of music that's played. So musicians in ceremony can, not always, but can be put on a pedestal. Because especially if you're in the middle of a ceremony and the ceremony's difficult, or you feel like there's a lot of dense energy in the space and someone sings a song, shares an Icaro, right? And what is an Icaro? The Icaros are a channel that comes through from the plants themselves. We do a virtual cacao dieta, and at one point, which we're doing one this fall, but we haven't put the dates out yet. But during that, I give homework to say, like, make up a song with the spirit of cacao. You don't have to be a singer. You don't have to be a songwriter. You don't have to be a musician, but I want you to connect so deeply with this plant that you can hear a song play through her within your body, within your mind. And so what's being shared in the space is going to shift the energy of the space. So you could be feeling that dense energy in the ceremony, someone sings, and then the density kind of moves and the space feels different. So musicians, especially if their music is also good, they're not just like healing the space, but you're also like, wow, they have a great voice. Wow, they can really play that instrument well. They can be put on a pedestal almost immediately, which is something to take into consideration. So, take a deep breath, breathe out. In the same way that if a medicine server gives you, and I'm saying you because I can't say gives the space, because everybody's experience is different in the space, but gives you an incredible ceremony, you might, after the retreat, put them up on a pedestal. You might say, wow, they were incredible. I really fucking love them. They did everything that they could for me. In the same way that other facilitators and guardians in the space, if they help you through a process, or even something as simple, they help you to the bathroom in a time of need, we can end up putting people on pedestals, not because they necessarily deserve it, but because we are under medicine. I'm specifically speaking to medicine ceremonies right now, but let's also not forget this can happen in the yoga community, the breathwork community, all different types of other community, even like the herbalism communities, right? Like pedestals can just happen because people have a good experience while they are having a spiritual experience. So it feels like that good experience is elevated because of the spirituality and energy behind it. So this is really important for the conversation, because once people get put on pedestals, and if it's not just one person putting them on a pedestal, but it's many people putting them on a pedestal, we see that it can be difficult to bring them back down. One of the things that I had shared on my story that I feel is an important piece of this puzzle is there's two ways that you can be perpetuating harm. There's the direct way that you can be perpetuating harm if you're not trained, if you are physically abusing people, mentally abusing people, sexually abusing people, financially abusing people. And then there's the indirect way, which is the people that uphold shit ass systems. They are the people that, I can give you an example. There was this person many years ago when I worked at that place in New Hampshire who was like, you know, I know it's not a good place. When myself, Dylan, and this other person were deciding to leave, we confided in this person and told them what was going on. And they said, you know, I always leave because I know it's not a safe space and I know it's not a good space. But then I think, like, at least I'm here though. Like, I should go back. I should facilitate. Like, I should be around the medicine so that I could help the people that show up. And I cannot get on board with that mindset and that mentality in any fucking way, shape, or form. And the reason being is you are perpetuating, upholding a system that should not be upheld. The more that you come back to this place and go, oh, well, look at me. First off, that comes from a place of ego, to think that you being there makes the place any safer. Again, what did I say in the beginning? When it comes to actually creating safe spaces, the people in their body and minds need to feel safe. You saying that it is a safe space and knowing that you are a good person does not make a space safe. If you're watching this on YouTube, please tell me what you think of my facial expressions, because I always wonder what people are thinking of that. And if you're watching this on Spotify and Apple, what type of facial expressions do you think I'm making, especially if you know me? So the indirect way of upholding those spaces, another indirect way, which is so fucking important to me, is the idea that people will say, well, I really want community and I have a business myself and this community already has people that are around. Sorry if you can hear the wind. We are outside in the yard. And they will say that they need to stay around these communities or continue to be a part of these communities, whether they're a part of ceremonies or they're a part of other things, because it will get their business more clients. It will keep them involved. Now, granted, I also want to give this disclaimer. Many people over the years have said to me, oh, well, Dan, you know, like specifically in the New England area, they're like, you know, there's just not a lot of community. There's not a lot of places and spaces that we can go to. I grew up in Staten Island, New York, so I could go over to Jersey. I could go into any of the 5 boroughs. I can go to Pennsylvania. I can go to Connecticut. And like, there are going to be communities that are only an hour drive away from my house. So people in the New England area will say, you know, sometimes you need to drive 4 or 5 hours just to like be a part of a gathering, you know? So like, you don't want to miss the opportunity to continue to be in community. And to that, I say, first off, I think you have no fucking balls. That is my own opinion, and I stand 10 toes down on that one. But I also think that, okay, so then you take on that karma. It would have been so smart for Dylan and I to have stayed in that community in New Hampshire to bring our business more people. It probably would have even been smart for Dylan and I not to be very vocal about when we left that place. And I was like, yeah, that place is in fuck all integrity, and I don't agree with their morals and their ethics. And maybe that is the Staten Islander in me. That feels the need to be vocal about my stance on things. But I also think that that's so important when we work with these medicines. These medicines are not something, just spirituality in general. You could do something like breath work, and that could put somebody into psychosis or a version of psychosis. So like, if you are going to be in these communities, you are going to be a facilitator, you are going to have a business in these places, you need to be mindful of that. You need to be thinking of that. So the reason for me to be very outward and vocal was, after I learned what I learned at that place, I would have never sent any of my loved ones, my community members, or my students, for that matter, and clients, to that place ever again. Why? Because I love those fucking people, and I don't want them in a space that I know is unsafe. Take a deep breath. So it would have probably, I can't say for sure, but it probably would have been smart for Dylan and I to either keep our mouths shut and been like, you know, not take a side on it. But also, I feel like when it does come to working with psychedelics and working with people in general, if you stand for nothing, I think you're a little bitch. And that is just how I feel about it. You have to have a stance on something. First off, these are indigenous medicines that we are working with. So having a stance on where the money should be going back to is one of the first things that you should feel. So originally when I started working there, I was told that the medicine was going back to certain tribes in certain areas. And then as I continued working there and I became a deeper and deeper part of the team, I recognized that not only was I not getting paid what I should have been getting paid to give up every single weekend for weeks in a row, as well as not be able to work during the week. I couldn't take clients during the week because I was so tired from the weekends. But then the money wasn't even going back to the tribes that they should have been going back to, the indigenous peoples and the land that they should have been going back to. You need to take a stand on that. You can't work with these indigenous medicines and say, well, you know, like, no, that's fucking sacred reciprocity, first and foremost. Second off, if it wasn't for these indigenous wisdom keepers, you wouldn't have these fucking medicines. We are white people in the United States, I'm speaking for myself, obviously, working with these indigenous medicines. Like, that's like the surface layer of what we need to be doing. Then what else happens underneath is like, of course, but also like, to me, that was very jarring to realize, okay, well, I was willing to take a very, very low pay, knowing that indigenous peoples were being paid very well and that could be life-changing for them. But then to find out that, you know, the long story short is that money was being funneled to the person at the top and they had an issue and they were fueling that issue. And so if Dylan and I would have been quiet about when we left, that might have kept more people around us. But we left, and I can't even really say Dylan, I can really only speak for myself. I was fucking hot and heavy, and I was telling any person that would fucking listen to me. And I stand by that decision. But yes, that meant that there were a ton of fuck all people that I don't want as my clients that we lost as clients. Because to them, they were like, well, this is the only place that I know of where I can do this. So if Dan doesn't want to be a part of it, like, I'm just going to have to not be a part of Dan's communities. Which is like, whoa, that just tells me who you are as a fucking person. And good, I don't want you as my fucking client. I don't want you in my goddamn community if that's how you fucking feel, you know? And I understand people are different. Again, like, I'm trying to be as nice as I can in my thoughts about this, because I understand some people are very uncomfortable with confrontation and, you know, that type of thing. And yeah, there are times where I don't want to get fucking confrontational either. But in that situation, I felt it was needed. But the other piece of that is Dylan and I could have stood as a part of that community and convinced ourselves that, well, as long as we're there, this can be a good place and we can get a ton of people to join our community stuff and really start, you know, making sure that at least the offerings that we do are safe and held. And neither of us felt good about that. For like context, basically, I was there for 6 months, and then Dylan and I decided to come on a trip to Peru, and we had just done a private ayahuasca ceremony in the jungle in Iquitos, and it was us with one of our teachers, his wife, and then the guy whose boat brought us out there, and then the kid who was also helping the boat guy out. And it was just us. And the next morning, as all of us were coming out of our ayahuasca slumbers, I said to Dylan, like, there's no way I'm going back to that place. And I just want you to know that now. And his response was, I've needed an out for years, but I haven't felt like there was like a real out for me. And that was when he decided to come down to Staten Island. Shout out to my mother for being like, yeah, you and your dog can come here. You know, if that place is fucking shit, then get out of there, man. And so having that conversation was such a pivotal moment for us, because although we were both young and here we were just in the jungle right off of ayahuasca the next morning, we were both like, that is a really bad place, and I don't want my energy, I don't want my business, I don't want my legacy entangled with that place any more than it already has been. With those people. Because I will venture to say there's a very small amount of people, some of you listen to this podcast and I absolutely love you very much, but a very small amount of people who actually ended up breaking away from that space when Dylan and I left and they heard our stories. There were a lot of people that heard our stories and heard what was going on behind the scenes and heard about other people that were harmed physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially, and we're still just kind of like, yeah, but blah, blah, blah. And that's why I don't talk to those fucking people. So having that conversation was kind of one of those moments where it just felt like, if that means that I have less people in my community, and that means that I have less money in my pocket, but at the end of the day, I can sleep well knowing that I'm not upholding any systems of harm and I'm not harming anyone myself, then I feel good about that. Let's take a deep breath. And of course, it felt really difficult for me when I was still there and knew that harm was happening and I wanted to get out of it, but I was told, you know, you've made a commitment to be here for X amount of time. We at least need you for X amount of time. They did not know that when I came back from Peru, I was not going to be there, but that didn't matter. I was standing 10 toes down on the fact that I won't be back here. Now, I also want to speak to the piece of the puzzle that is, some people are just not good at what they do. I talked about that on my story too when I had this reflection, which was like, you know, there are people that are just bad people in general, but then there are also people that probably shouldn't be serving because they're just straight up not good at what they're doing. They're not good at holding space, or they're not good at reading energy in the room. Like, that's a totally different conversation to have. If they are not harming people, but they're not necessarily helping people because they're not good, there is a way to have those types of conversations as well, and just be open and honest that, like, you should get feedback from people, and you have to let people know, like, we want your honest feedback. Honest feedback after a retreat, after ceremonies, after working one-on-one with people can be really overwhelming and can be really sad, because you might think you're doing a really incredible job and then you get that feedback, but that feedback, to stay, my opinion here, in ethics and integrity and morale, is to be like, okay, if I'm not harming anybody, but I'm not really helping anyone either, then there's time for me to take back. You know, I think it's so interesting. This is a random piece of the puzzle that I'm bringing in here. What a puzzle we are creating today here, family. Is the people that think they are really operating from an embodied sense of teaching and are not. I have had 2 teachers throughout my lifetime had to sit me down and be straight up and stern with me and be like, hey, you're doing things that I really don't believe you're embodied and ready to do. And it wasn't because they felt like they were better than me. They are good fucking teachers. 2 of these fucking teachers. One is a man from a long, incredible, devout Hindu lineage. And the other one, she is also incredibly devout in her work to indigenous medicines, working with them, serving them, you know, and I appreciated when both of them took the opportunity to say, like, I'm going to preface this by saying that I love you and I know that you're powerful, but this is not what you're supposed to be doing. You need to take a step back. And instead of, because I've had this happen before where I've seen this, where people immediately get angry and it's like their ego comes right out and they're like, no, of course I'm supposed to be doing this. Even at that place in New Hampshire, there were people that were serving medicine that were not trained to be serving medicine. They were not. And then another piece of the puzzle, but maybe we won't talk about that right now, is also just because somebody is an indigenous server doesn't mean that they're a good server. Oh, I know that kind of like rubs people the wrong way, but that's like a fact. Just because they are indigenous or they have blood of the lineage doesn't mean that they are the safest option, the best option, the right option for you. But anyway, coming back to people like getting really defensive and getting in their ego. And it's like, no, like if you have good teachers, your teachers are telling you this for a reason. Imagine that your teachers are an extension of whatever it is that you believe in. God, Krishna, Jah, the tree outside of your fucking house, the universe, whatever it is that you fucking call it. They are an extension of that. And if that is the way that spirit is like, okay, we've got to let them know that this is how it is, take that. Maybe take it with a grain of salt, assess it for yourself, see if you can ask people that you've served in your community. I'm not saying serve medicine, but you've served maybe in energy healing or in other types of ways. Take that. Take a step back to be somebody that is, in my opinion, an ethical and in integrity business owner and facilitator. They will take the step back if someone says, hey, this wasn't what I expected. This is what I expected. This is what you delivered. And this is where I feel like it fell short. You can take that information, sit with that information. And yes, let's be realistic about the spectrum that we're talking about right now, which is sometimes the person's going to be right. Sometimes the person's going to be wrong. Sometimes the person's going to fall somewhere in the middle. But the important piece is that you took the step back. You took a moment to meditate on it, give your own discernment to it, maybe got a second opinion from another teacher, from a facilitator that you work with, from more clients that you work with that you know will be radically open and honest with you. So this piece of the puzzle is also very important because I know many people throughout these different spiritual communities that have been faced with this. Hey, you shouldn't be serving medicine. And they're like, no. Well, the medicine told me. And then they fucking wake up on a Tuesday and there they are serving medicine. If you know exactly who I am talking shit about right now. That's incredible. Thank you for being here. If you don't know who and you want to message me privately, I will tell you their name. I will give you exactly who they are. And so, but I'm not going to spread that information out necessarily right here. That's so funny. So there are so many pieces to this puzzle. And then I think that this ends us off because we're rounding out about a half hour and I want to know what your thoughts are. I want to know if you have questions, comments, if you agree with me, if you're like, Dan, I completely disagree. You know, people have changed my lives in ceremony and that means they are talented and they should be in those spaces, even if they're maybe not a good person outside of that. For me, it feels like when I've said this so many times, if you have drank ayahuasca 100 times, but you cannot be nice and have a genuine conversation with the guy at the grocery store, with the guy at the gas station, then your version of spirituality and healing is skewed. You are not living here on earth. And living here on earth is the greatest gift that you have right now. One day you will die and you will go to the other side. That is not right now. It is incredible that you have this gift of life, that your heart is beating on its own, that you're breathing and you're not even thinking about how incredible that is, that your body can breathe on its own. If you need to be around people that are only using fluffy words all the time, that are always super deep in a process, you have not figured out that there is a bridge that you need to create. You need to enjoy the aspects of spirituality that we have here in this lifetime. But I hate to burst your bubble. That's a 1% of the spirituality that exists in this fucking universe. As human beings, we have such a limited capacity of what's actually going on in this universe. So enjoy what you can, but enjoy what's down here on this earth. And I'm not saying just enjoy like, you know, the body that you have and whatnot, but like enjoying the community and the connection that you can have with other people. Learn as much as you can. Talk to the trees, talk to the river. Enjoy the other things, which is like watching a fucking movie with people that you love, making popcorn and having brownies, like the things that make you happy. You need to have a balance of both sides. If you cannot live on that bridge and you are constantly in the ethers, you haven't done any of the integration work, and your version of spirituality disconnects you. And spirituality is all about connecting us from one side of the ether with the other side on earth. I wanted to say one more thing. Stick with me here. Question. What does integrity look like for you? Can you ask your teacher certain questions? We love doing our discovery calls with people for our retreats, and they've got a ton of questions. Like, we love that. Of course, we've definitely had people that had questions that were questionable questions. But in general, like asking, like, where were you trained? What are the lineages that you work with? If this situation happens, how do you plan to handle it? Have you ever had a situation like this happen on one of the retreats that you've hosted? Have you ever had this situation happen at a place that you've worked at before? Let your facilitators be open and vulnerable with you. That's first and foremost. And then ask yourself, like, what is the community that I deeply desire? Is it an abundant community that there's just so many people and so many different things that I can do that that's really what I'm looking for? Or are you desiring to have a community where maybe it's on the smaller side, but people get to have difficult conversations? In my opinion, I choose the smaller community with the difficult conversations. And the reason why I do that is because I think difficult conversations grow us. I think difficult conversations shape our discernment and teach us new things. And for me, having the difficult conversations when I was at that place of like, oh, so you're going to stay here? There's a musician from that place who I respected so deeply when I met them. And, you know, they're a good enough person. But the choice that they made to stay for how long they chose to stay for, it just, you know, and I remember asking like, oh, like you're planning to stay? And this person being like, yeah, like, I mean, I just like, this is really what I'm called to do. And me being like, I had already made my own business and my own community on Staten Island before I had made my way to New Hampshire. So I was kind of like, you can do it yourself. You can make your own community. You have to be devoted and dedicated to creating a community and having a thriving business, but you can do it. And that was difficult for me to hear because I really, really respected that specific person. And then to find out that that was the choice that they were making was very hard for me. But I'm glad that it happened because it has allowed me to remember and know that those are just not the type of people that I desire to be with. And it's also not the type of person that I desire to be. And maybe if that person would have been more open to more difficult conversations, maybe we could have had deeper conversations about their choices, about their decisions. But I also know at that time I was really lit up in an angry way, and I wasn't really willing to like hear anybody that was like, but you know, like, isn't everywhere like this? Which, like, I hated fucking hearing that because I was like, no, like, you people need to get out of this area because it is not like this everywhere. So questioning what it means for us to be in integrity as somebody who wants to sit in a community, questioning what it means for us to be in integrity as a leader in the community. If you're listening to this and you're like, I'm not a space holder, I'm not a facilitator, but you're still a person that shows up to these things, you're a leader in some way, shape, or form, because there's always going to be somebody new that joins the group that is going to look at the people that have been on this path for many years. So even though you may not want the role of leader and leadership, bitch, you've got it. Because when someone's new, they're going to want to learn from your experiences in your life. There's so much more that I can go into. And of course, maybe I should round this out by ending with, we also can't sit around and talk shit about these people until we're blue in the face. And I don't mean right up front. I mean like as the years go on. Because there are many establishments and communities that are upheld without integrity. And we don't want to find ourselves in a position where we are just constantly in this perpetual state of just, one, thinking that we're better than others, two, thinking that we always know what's right, three, feeling like, well, fuck these people. If you don't know me and this is the first time you're listening to me, I love to talk shit about people. Who doesn't like to talk shit about people? Are you kidding me? Listen, I'm not one of those spiritual people who's like, I really don't like to talk shit, because if you want to tell me something, I am all ears. But that also comes with knowing that there's a certain amount of the talking shit that you can do before it becomes problematic for you and your choices and your decisions. So rounding it out on that note, because I think that there is a balance in this lifetime. And I also think that this topic that we've spoken about today is unbelievably, extremely fucking important. And I want to say thank you so much to my community that has been here for the last 5, 6, 7 years that I've been in business, and that I've been doing this work outwardly and been having difficult conversations or bringing up topics that maybe felt uncomfortable. And I just want to say thank you to all of you guys who have been there for this. Sending many blessings to you and yours, and I will see you all again soon.